Hi everyone, I'm Johnny Thompson and welcome to another episode of our People at the Heart podcast, where we like to chat about all kinds of things, both serious and light-hearted, connected with our team and our work here at RiskSTOP Group. Now, there's an old saying that everyone has a book in them. And while that may be true, most people never really get round to writing one. Often people talk about it for years and nothing ever emerges, but not our head of IT, Martin Lake. In fact, Martin decided one book wasn't enough for the world and has already written two, which suggests either admirable determination, Martin, or a worrying lack of feedback from the first book. So, Martin J. Lake, author of Beyond the Stones and the wider Chronicles of the Realm series, welcome.
Thank you, Johnny, and thank you for the opportunity to bang on about my book in yet another forum.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Now, like all good stories, we'll start at the beginning. So, when did this first move from having something in you, if you like, then emerge and turn into something that you've actually taken on and done?
And it's like, as you say, everyone feels they have a story in them, and you know, people will daydream and think about things and kind of have ideas and thoughts, and I've always been really interested in fantasy, Lord of the Rings, Terry Pratchett, the whole gamut, as well as historical stuff, so Arthurian legend, Norse mythology. But it all really started probably about 12 years ago. I sat down with my family, my wife and two daughters, and we were talking about, just over Christmas, about New Year's resolutions. And, that's sort of, they were coming up with their normal things. So, daughters were saying, not going to sponge off Dad quite so much this year and keep my room tidier, all the ones that will last about 2 weeks. And just off the top of my head, I said, I'm going to write a book. And it was treated with the contempt that probably a lot of people get when they say, I'm going to write a book, or I'm going to, write the latest hit song. Absolutely. And I sort of sat down and I wrote 2 or 3 chapters of what I thought was absolutely the next Harry Potter epic. Gave it to my wife to read, and should have had a clue after about page 1 when she asked for a glass of wine. But she ploughed through it, and once she'd finished reading, and it took about 10 minutes, she turned around to me and said, "This is total rubbish." Which was a little bit of a shock. She said, actually, the story potentially has merit, she said, but you can't write. That if you're going to do this, learn to do it properly. And I think that was the real difference. So a lot of people will sit and they'll start, writing down and maybe write a few chapters. And I genuinely think if she'd have said, oh yeah, no, this is all right, I'd have maybe written a little bit more and it would have fizzled out.
Yeah.
But because she was, as my wife is, so completely honest and said how bad it was, that I then went out and I joined the evening classes for creative writing courses, and I read up a lot about it and actually started to learn the craft of writing properly, and actually realized that this is something that I really did enjoy, rather than just go, oh, I've got a book in me, I want to write it. I found a creative side to me that I didn't realize I'd previously had, and literally from there just carried on writing, and took about 8 years from that New Year's resolutions to book 1 being published.
So that's a lot of determination, Martin. I mean, in all seriousness, getting that initial feedback, I think would probably end it for most people that would just say, oh, well, I'm not going to bother with it. So what is it behind this? It's obviously a passion. Why do you think you're so fascinated by writing?
Well, I say the motivation was Catherine saying that I was rubbish at something, and it was like, oh, well, I am going to learn to write and learn to do it properly, and just realized it was something that I really enjoyed, was passionate about. Probably says something about me that I quite enjoy spending time on my own, listening to imaginary people in my head and writing down what they tell me to do.
And you may as well make use of that then.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes. I'm sure in any other hobby that would be frowned upon, but as an author, you are encouraged to listen to these imaginary people in your head. And it was just, I loved developing characters and seeing the story develop. And I'm not the sort of writer that will plot an entire book out beginning to end before I start writing. I'm what's called a pantser, so I very much write by the seat of my pants. So I don't really know entirely. I've got an overview of what the story is going to be, but I don't know all the intricacies until I literally kind of sit and write and almost listen to what the characters are telling me to do.
Yeah. I've got to ask, what's with the slightly more distinguished Martin J. Lake for the title? I'm sure everyone's curious about that.
Well, the only reason is that there is a Martin Lake who is also a fantasy author and he's British.
Right.
And he got there first, which I felt was very unfair of him.
Yeah.
So
the G makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as an author, you're not supposed to sort of pick somebody else's name, so you do need to differentiate it. So yeah, I just stuck my middle initial in there.
Without giving it all away, obviously, because I mean, you want people to read the books, but tell us a little bit about Beyond the Stones, the first book.
So it came about from, as I was into Arthurian legend and the Norse mythology. So the premise is that there are these other magical realms where, the traditional elves and dwarves and good versus evil are. And they, in the time of King Arthur, they were all separated from Earth. So magic used to be around it. Science and technology gradually overcame that, and until you get to like 21st century Britain, where it's all science and technology and magic is confined to myth and legend. And then all of a sudden these realms merge again and we get incursions by evil elves, and it's like, oh, what are we going to do? And then the hero of the story appears.
Any hidden allegorical stuff or anything? You know what it's like when you're studying English literature. I'll go way, way back. And the teacher would always say, but what the author was really saying here was this.
I made as you alluded to in your introduction, it's like one book wasn't enough. I made the, possibly with hindsight, slightly silly decision to write it as a trilogy.
Yeah.
Without ever having written the first book and not realizing what it would be. So it was always designed as a trilogy. And I had no idea how book one was going to end, even to the point where I was about halfway through writing it. I still didn't know. So in terms of hidden meanings and messages, and it's like, absolutely none of that. It's just a story that I enjoyed writing, but there's no hidden meanings.
And you genuinely actually don't really know, in essence, where it's going?
No.
Yeah.
And the reason
That's
book
interesting.
2 took so long to write was that I didn't know what book 2, I knew what the overarching plot was, but all of the rest of it, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And that took me 18 months to figure out. So I've learnt my lesson. So book 2 is got a lot more that sets up ready for book 3.
Because I think that's what we often think with books and authors do. We imagine that they've got some grand plan and grand scheme that's going to take them right up to that point. But from some of the reading I've done, that's usually not the case. It is kind of a little bit of make it up as you go along. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which brings us really to the question, what does it take? What does it actually take to write a book, Martin?
So I go to a Summers Writer School every August, and I was talking to somebody there probably about 3 years ago, and they said, I do find that being an author is a little bit like having homework most nights of the week for the rest of your life. And it is.
You're selling it really well there.
Yeah. I mean, if you want a hobby that you can pick up and do for an hour or two a week, do not get into writing.
Yeah.
You can literally spend 2 or 3 hours just on one paragraph. And unless you're really lucky to get a publisher, which I initially self-published, I now have a publisher, they do quite a lot of the editing work, etc. for you. But if you're self-publishing, which vast majority of people do, not only have you got to write the story, you've got to edit it, you've got to market it, you've got to work on the covers, you've got to work on the layout so it's ready for Kindle as well as paperback. It's a huge amount of work to do. Now, I have entire shelves of bookcases at home, Stonehenge and Standing Stones, Arthurian legend.
And that I would imagine is the fun bit for you. Yeah, you're delving into something at top of getting underneath it, but then you're actually using that. You're not just sort of storing it in your mind and that's it, but you're making use of that. Almost you're recycling that knowledge and into something else.
Absolutely, yeah. And you do end up with some huge amounts of weird knowledge, and you can also end up with a very interesting search history. So the novels are set in 21st century Britain. So you've got science, technology, modern warfare, but you've also got magic being used. So, I've had to research things like, what is the area of effect of a fragmentation grenade, or, how do you change a magazine on a AK-47 or an SA-80? And I'm sure there's possibly somewhere in the government that's looking at this search history going, what is this guy doing? And then, oh, no, he's an author. That's fine. You just ignore him.
What I find really fascinating is when you paint a stereotypical image in your mind of an author, to be somebody quite creative and so on, and then you generate a picture of someone who is head of IT. I'm not being disparaging in any way, Martin, but it feels like potentially there's sort of two Martins here.
It is different. So as I say, it's I discovered, I've been working in IT since I was, for the last 42 years, but it was only the last, 10, 15 years that I've discovered writing. So I discovered that creative side to me that I didn't really know. So I've never been into drawing or music or anything like that. So discovering that I had a creative side was a bit of a shock, but I think it just goes to prove that, everyone has got multiple aspects to their personality, and how you are professionally isn't necessarily how you are out of work.
Any overlaps?
Occasionally it helps having access to a fast printer. And I'm now really comfortable with that aspect of my personality, and, really enjoy doing, I love the sense of achievement, that gives me. And it's just amazing when somebody sort of turns around and she said, "Oh, I've read your book and I really enjoyed it."
What's been the most meaningful moment for you?
So year before last, I did an official launch at the Summers Writers School.
Yeah.
So there's about 250 people go there, and every year there's a handful of authors who have launched books, and you get to do a book launch there. And having a queue of people queuing up for you to sign the book is amazing. Somebody took a picture of it, and I did send that to my wife, and she said, "Oh, that's amazing." She said, you need to get used to it. She said, "There'll be another queue tomorrow." And I said, "Really, you think so?" She said, "Yeah, they'll be bringing it back for a refund," which is genuinely what she said.
Still your number one fan?
Absolutely, yes. No, she has read neither of my books. We had an agreement. If I sold 1,000 copies, she'd read it. And I got to 1,000 copies and she upped it to 2,000. But that having people queuing up, genuinely, wanting you to sign a copy of your book that they've bought. And the other moment was getting to number 4 on the Amazon bestseller list for my genre. Numbers 2 and 3 were 2 of J.K. Rowling's books.
Right.
So I thought, you know what? If I can be there, I'm not saying for instance my books are as good as hers, but for that one day I was up there, and I've got a screenshot, and it's like, yes.
And where was Martin Lake?
Martin Lake was number 4.
No, but I'm talking about Martin. You're Martin J. Lake. Where was?
I think he's retired now, so his books are still available to buy. But
he wasn't on the list.
Oh no.
Result. There you go. You could be proud of that. So look, let's go back to where we started. This whole theme and this idea of people having an idea, people thinking about doing something, whether it's a book or whether it's a passion or whatever, but something in us seems to hold us back, or I don't know what, from making that step, making that leap. What would you say to them? With the experience that you've had, how do you overcome that initial barrier, and then what do you get out of it, really?
So I think the biggest thing is whatever it is, go for it. I mean, I genuinely, even after I'd done some writing courses, didn't think that I would make it.
Yeah.
And I still work full time. So being an author for me is very much a hobby. It's a hobby that's got a little bit out of control, but it's I fully appreciate I will never make a living from being an author. But even when I was writing a book, I never truly believed that I would ever sell 1,000 copies. I thought, well, maybe if I sold 20 or 30 to family and friends by badgering them, then I can say that I am a moderately successful amateur author. But the point is that, well, if I can do it, and not just writing anything, so whether you're into music or drawing, just go for it, because you don't know until you try and you put the effort in. And it does take effort. It's, you don't just sit there and, after a weekend typing and you've got a bestseller. It's a lot of work, but that's true for anything. If you put the effort in and it's something that you're passionate about, and you can put some dedication into it, it's most skills can be learnt.
Yeah. I guess some people would possibly say, well, yeah, but what might people think, or what if I fail, and then what might people think? But does that really matter?
No. And one of the things that I've learned within the writing community, especially, is they're really supportive. So, I'm a member of a couple of writing groups, and so I go to this Sons Writers School, which incidentally is a charity that ACT provided a grant for last year, which is brilliant.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I was going to say that there is help out there, isn't there, with most things?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you'll find in most towns and cities there are, at least one, if not many, writing groups that you can join, and most of them are really welcoming and will be really supportive. And I've learned so much from you take along a chapter for critique, and you'll get some honest critique, but it will be done in a really friendly, supportive way. And there has been a lot of friendly rib taking about my book. The comments of, oh yes, I must buy a copy because I've got a wonky table that's just the right thickness for. But actually, I genuinely do think that the people who have read the book, they're not saying it's absolutely the best thing they've ever read, but they're saying, they've really enjoyed it.
Quick fire round. So when you're writing, is it coffee, tea, or?
I don't drink coffee. I wish I liked coffee. I don't like it, so it's tea.
Tea, right. Paper or digital?
I write on a laptop, but I review and edit on paper.
Favourite fantasy author?
Serious fantasy is is Tolkien.
Yeah.
Comedic fantasy is Terry Pratchett.
Favourite People at the Heart podcast presenter?
Yours truly. I did think about being humorous then, but no.
I'm shocked. I thought Natalie Joyce was just going to immediately come out your mouth.
No, but Natalie didn't ask me to talk about my book. You did. That's giving you a few brownie points.
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. And what about book 3? When do you think it's going to come out?
Say hopefully next summer.
And how do people get them? You mentioned Amazon before, so you can go on Amazon and just get the book, or you can ask you nicely for a...
Yeah, so it's available on Amazon on both Kindle ebook and paperback. So Beyond the Stones, which is book 1, and then Daughter of Destiny is book 2. So yeah, they're both currently available. Trying to get them into local Waterstones, and I've approached them. I just need to get copies that aren't printed by Amazon because they don't like that. Just trying to get a local printer to print non-Amazon copies, and Waterstones have said that they'll stock them. Which would be exciting.
That must be lovely. I'm just looking at you holding those books, having something tangible in your hands like that and thinking, I did this. That must feel good.
Actually, when you were saying about the moments, that when I very first got the first book sent through and there was a physical copy, that was amazing. You see your name on the front, you think, I did that. It is a real sense of achievement.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you very much, Martin. Is there anything else that you...
Literally just to say, if you have a passion for something, then whether you're good, mediocre, poor at it, don't let it stop you. Because if just do it and you will get better, and just the sense of achievement and the feeling that, I've done this, whether it's running a marathon, writing a book, writing your own song, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just go for it. The worst you're going to do is find out that it's not something you're passionate about, but if you don't try, you'll never know.
So seriously, well done.
Thank you.
Well done, mate. I am genuinely impressed by your achievement, even if there is a reluctance in me to show it.
The bit that's impressed is very well hidden.
No, seriously, you've done incredibly well, mate, and you should be very proud of yourself. So yeah, well done.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
And that's all for this episode of our People at the Heart podcast. Thank you everyone for listening in. I, along with one or two other presenters, will be back soon with all kinds of things to talk about from different guests, and keep your eyes peeled for more episodes and announcements coming shortly. And if you want to see more of what we're doing around social responsibility, don't forget to head to riskstopgroup.co.uk or follow us on social media. Remember, here at RiskSTOP Group, it's all about keeping people safe and secure and believing in social responsibility and sustainability. Until the next time, everyone, goodbye for now.